Well, dear Danielle, dear Herman, honorary guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the inauguration of the Single Supervisory Mechanism. Today, I'd like to reflect on what made this joint achievement possible and how it can inspire us as we strive to make Europeans stronger together. The crisis has caused many of our fellow citizens to question whether the European project can keep its promise of shared economic prosperity. And the response to the crisis indeed took time to take shape, as we did not initially have all the instruments to address its causes and consequences. This has forced us to fundamentally reflect on what is necessary to achieve a genuine economic and monetary union. In particular, we needed to decisively and credibly address the weaknesses in the banking sector. This was not only key to restoring investors' confidence, it was also key to protecting citizens and businesses as taxpayers, depositors, and borrowers. We agreed that this challenge would be best addressed together through the establishment of a banking union. It entailed a single supervisory mechanism, a single resolution mechanism, and a common rule book, including the harmonized deposit guarantee schemes, which may evolve into a common European deposit guarantee. This was a fundamentally political decision taken by the European legislators, the Council, and the European Parliament. And once the decision to establish the SSM has been made, the ECB assumed a key role in bringing about this change in only 1 year, as we've just seen. The setting up of European banking supervision has been the largest step towards deeper integration since the creation of our economic and monetary union, one that provides a determined response to the crisis, strengthens the euro, and will protect us in the future. One that shows that if we decide to act together, we can be stronger together in Europe. Fragilities in the banking sector were a major risk that had to be directly confronted. In a context where the integrity of the euro area had been threatened, the Council and the Parliament entrusted the ECB with supervisory tasks. We were and remain determined to protect the euro. We are thus proud to take on this new role and committed to fulfilling the high expectations. It was nevertheless a major organizational challenge to get the SSM up and running in only 1 year, whilst also conducting the comprehensive assessment. Together, we have successfully accomplished this task. Let me pay tribute to all the ECB staff, old and new, who made banking supervision a European reality. Thanks to their hard work, the ECB has shown an impressive ability to adapt. And while we ensure a strict separation between monetary policy and banking supervision, both these areas of activity will be able to rely on the accumulated expertise in shared services areas, and of course be inspired by the European spirit that guides our work. The SSM is also benefiting from the experience and resources of the national authorities. We have combined all these strengths. They make up our DNA. We are, however, creating something new. The SSM creates the institutional conditions for overcoming fragmentation in supervisory practices and allows us to define a single model. We are establishing a common methodology, a joint culture, a shared reputation. They will ensure that we have the right instruments and incentives to effectively carry out our supervisory tasks. They have already been successfully tested, as the comprehensive assessment shows. Let us at the same time recognize that this is just the beginning. The ECB will have to perform consistently well day after day, year after year, in the face of very challenging supervisory tasks. Moreover, we need to further think about how we can improve our union, not only in the banking sector, but also in relation to capital markets and in the economic and fiscal realms. Our responsibility towards the people of this continent is indeed to put in place a sustainable economic model that helps to increase employment and boost growth. I believe the experience of setting up the SSM and the banking union can inspire us in this context. Let me explain what I mean. The SSM and more broadly banking union show that Europe can make a difference. We can draw lessons from this achievement from both a policy and institutional perspective. From a policy standpoint, adopting a European approach to tackle risks in the banking sector clearly helps protecting individuals and businesses. First, it protects them as taxpayers. During the crisis, the cost of restructuring failing banks was borne disproportionately by taxpayers. This was not only unfair, as it entailed in some instances large social and economic costs. It also created the wrong incentives for banks' shareholders and creditors. Fairer and more effective burden-sharing rules have now been put in place, and resolution costs will be borne primarily by the banks themselves. Second, it protects them as depositors. Deposits under 100,000 euros will not be touched, and those above that amount will benefit from preferential treatment compared to other unsecured creditors. Third, the banking union and the SSM in particular aims to protect borrowers by restoring trust in the soundness of the banking sector, thereby increasing its capacity to lend to the real economy. Fairer and more sustainable conditions have thus been created. And this achievement can serve as inspiration in other areas of economic policy. There are also lessons to be learned from an institutional perspective. The Single Supervisory Mechanism and the Single Resolution Mechanism are strong enforcement mechanisms. Both institutions follow a governance model which seems to work well, be it at euro area level or at EU-wide level. This approach involves three components: a political agreement at European level based on well-defined objectives, a European authority with strong enforcement powers, and an integrated system reflecting Europe's diversity. This is the approach of competition policy, monetary policy, and single market policies. It is now the model of banking supervision and is set to be the model for banking resolution. In the future, we can learn from this experience as we progress towards economic union and capital markets integration. This governance model is in fact a valuable practical example of the EU's motto, united in diversity. Internally, it makes us stronger together. For instance, the SSM reinforces the banking system of the euro area as a whole, thus reducing systemic risk to the benefits of all. Externally, it provides a basis for increasing our global influence in setting high regulatory standards. Finally, European action needs to be fully legitimized. As part of our interinstitutional agreement with the European Parliament and of our Memorandum of Understanding with the Council, We are committed to very high standards of accountability, which compare favorably at international level. But let us not forget that our legitimacy crucially depends on the ability to fulfill the mandate that was democratically assigned to us. This requires a constant attention and continuous effort. Let me conclude. While we celebrate today an important achievement, we need to be humble for the future and to ensure that we deliver on our tasks, old and new. The ECB has at the core of its mandate the protection of price stability. We now need to protect the economy in one other additional way, by preventing excessive risks in the banking sector. Protecting our fellow citizens as well as businesses from the dire effects of the crisis was the driving force behind the four presidents' report, which established a roadmap towards a genuine economic and monetary union. Just one concluding reflection. Our experience with the creation of the euro, with the creation of the ECB, of the banking union, of the SSM, and very nearly in the future, I hope, with the creation of a capital market union, all these experiences show one thing, that the only progress that we can really put in place is based on our ability to move from national sovereignty to shared sovereignty at a higher level, supranational level, which is the only consistent one with the global challenges that we face today. That's, in a sense, the bottom line of much of what I said. Dear Herman, you were the chef d'orchestre of our quartet. I believe it's no exaggeration to say that you have left your mark on history by masterfully conducting the discussions between European leaders, which led to the creation of the banking union. This has been an inspiring first movement. While we enjoy today's short entr'acte, we should also look ahead and prepare for the movements still to come as we progress together towards a genuine economic and monetary union. Thank you.
Dear President of the European Central Bank, dear Chair of the Supervisory Board, Mr. President of the Eurogroup, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here and to take the floor at this important moment. And today's inauguration of the Single Supervisory Mechanism signals a revolution in Europe's financial architecture. Just as importantly, we are celebrating the opening of a new chapter in the wider history of European integration. The banking union is the biggest leap forward since the creation of the euro. Let us not forget how implausible it seems 5 years ago. Even in the wake of Lehman Brothers, the biggest shock to our financial system since the 30s, the notion of centralized banking supervision was politically unthinkable. Just 5 years ago, it was unthinkable. It may be good to remember this now that it is reality. The idea had already been put forward before, but unfortunately, great ideas often require a crisis for them to become reality. It is regrettable, but not entirely surprising. Banking supervision is not just a technical matter between public authorities and financial institutions. That is a crucial aspect of it and the reason why we are gathered here among ourselves today, but it is not the only one. In the end, establishing banking supervision, which is corollary banking resolution, it's a deeply political affair. It touches upon the relationship between people as taxpayers and people as savers, consumers and investors. It is about trust, accountability, and solidarity. Perhaps trust is the key word here. The trust underpinning all credit. What if people can no longer trust their banks? What if people can no longer trust their currency? In our modern societies, with their millions of daily transactions and their infinite networks of contractual relations, it would quite simply be disastrous. Hence, the dangers of the years 2008-2012, when trust was at stake regarding banking and the Eurozone. The banking union was and is all about restoring trust. Also trust in our capacity to act. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased this inauguration event happens to take place at the very end of my mandate. In 10 days from now, I will be succeeded by the former Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. These past 5 years were dominated by the gravest crisis in the history of the European integration. Almost from the day I entered office in January 2010, we had to fight for financial stability and even for the integrity of the Eurozone. And it was only in this context that the decision to move banking supervision to union level became conceivable. Yes, became even necessary. Let me briefly evoke the particular drama of that moment. In the spring of 2012, we had 2 years of firefighting behind us. We had worked on the front of crisis management and rescue mechanisms, leading to the Treaty on a European Stability Mechanism, an instrument of solidarity among our countries. And we had worked on the front of prevention, leading to new budgetary rules and macroeconomic surveillance in the so-called six-pack, the two-pack, and the Treaty of Stability, Coordination and Governance, our instruments on the side of responsibility. But that spring, despite all these efforts and new instruments, despite all the efforts of the member states under programme or pressure, the risk of a Eurozone breakup was still perceived as real. The fall of the Greek government in February 2012 unleashed new uncertainties. Worries concerning the Spanish banking sector also crept in. The pressure seems never-ending. What struck me during that period in contact with leaders is that slowly the realization was sinking in that we were facing a systemic crisis. It was not just a sum of individual countries getting in trouble, but the architecture of the monetary union itself that was at stake. It was the belated discovery that the Eurozone is more than the sum of its parts, but a collective body with its own life. This may seem self-evident seen from the Euro Tower here in Frankfurt, but up until then it was not the experience of political leaders in our capital, let alone their public opinions. And this is where the report of the 4 presidents drew its full significance. At a special summit in May 2012, I engineered a mandate for the 4 of us, the heads of the Commission, the Eurogroup, the ECB and the European Council. And I kept up the pressure for the June deadline. We presented the first report a few days ahead of the June summit. The report was called, as some of you will remember, Towards a Genuine Economic and Monetary Union, and it identified steps on financial sector policies, on fiscal and economic policies, and on democratic accountability. In June 2012 summit, the June 2012 summit was perhaps the most important European Council of my 5 years in office. As always, leaders came with different priorities and expectations to Brussels. It was not all sure how far we would get, but something remarkable happened. In that meeting, leaders sensed that the moment called for a qualitative breakthrough. They had realized it had to be on banking union, the most urgent issue of all. It became a very long night. Tensions quickly became apparent, as is natural when the stakes are high. Some wanted to start with banking supervision to prevent new problems. Others preferred action on greater solidarity in the area of banking to overcome troubles from the past. In such a situation, you often have a blockage, a double no. But in the middle of the night, we could decide to do both. We tied two political decisions together: the creation of a single supervision mechanism for all Eurozone banks, and the possibility for failing banks to get capital directly from a common rescue fund. Our decision surprised many: markets, commentators, and in fact, even our own people were surprised. Most of the Council's press service had been sent to bed around 3 o'clock because no decision was expected. At an improvised press conference at dawn, I read out the final statement, and within 10 minutes after its publication, the markets started to pick up. It was one of the few occasions when a European decision was ahead of the curve of market expectations. The other one being the May 2010 decision with the 500 billion rescue funds. And I will never forget, a couple of hours later on that Friday, Mario Draghi walking into my office right before the start of the summit's last working session. A man under huge pressure for the first time in 8 months during which I'd seen him at work. You now looked relieved. Herman, he has said, do you realize what you all did last night? This is the game changer we need. The commitment of political leaders to European banking supervision created the opening he needed for his own institution to step up its role in the crisis, with words, now famous words, and with action, the OMT, which both came that summer. It was a turning point. Let me salute here all the work which has been done between the Friday morning, the 29th of June 2012, and this 1st of November, by hundreds, thousands of people. The Commission proposal, which came solidly and quickly. The legislative work of Council and Parliament, which we kept following. The work between all national supervisors, many of whom here today. The impressive banking health check, which you completed. And all the practical arrangements to successfully set up the Single Supervisory Mechanism. All this in the space of less than 30 months since the June 2012 summit. To EU standards, this has been done with the speed of light. And in fact, not only to our standards, but to all international standards. Ladies and gentlemen, in America, between the establishment of the dollar and that of the federal banking supervision lie almost 150 years. In Europe, between the creation of the euro and the SSM, only 15. So you will understand, it is for me a particular satisfaction to celebrate the breakthrough today at the very end of my European mandate, which has been so much shaped by our crisis response. It feels as if la boucle est bouclée, as if we are coming full circle. I am even tempted to open a wider circle. When I was a student of economics at Leuven University, I studied in detail the famous Werner report, 1970, the first serious study on economic and monetary union in Europe. And one of my professors was a member of the Werner group. So we all heard the arguments firsthand. Rereading it now, I rediscovered that already in 1970, for a monetary union, mention is made of the need to harmonize the regulations for credit institutions. Again, between the young student then and the end of a working life today, la boucle bouclée. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to take this occasion on these premises to thank the European Central Bank, and in particular its two presidents, Jean-Claude Trichet and Mario Draghi, for their role in taming the crisis of the Eurozone and shaping a new European currency for the world financial system. The European Central Bank maintained price stability in spite of all sorts of headwinds. And today, the new challenge is to keep doing so when the inflation rate is well below 2%. Another paradoxical surprise of economic life. Your institution always stuck to its principles, but never in a dogmatic way. All of us, the other EU institutions and the member states, entered from early 2010 in uncharted waters. We all took unprecedented decisions, setting up unprecedented instruments. You took many non-standard measures, and perhaps we are not at the end of the road. For a central bank, being independent does not mean being disconnected. And that's why the ECB presidents attend meetings of the European Council, the Euro summits, the Eurogroup, and the European Parliament. The work is not over. The four presidents' report on a genuine economic and monetary union is a roadmap for the upcoming years. The next frontier will be to move towards closer economic policy coordination. In fact, another topic that has been with us ever since the 70s monetary union debates, but which today gets real urgency. Europe has proven that, faced with an existential threat, we were capable of taking courageous decisions, such as the banking union. The challenge will now be to bring back sustainable growth and jobs. Here also, we must put aside taboos, ideology, obsessions, and be pragmatic and result-oriented. Ladies and gentlemen, without growth and jobs, the European idea itself is in danger. But we can overcome this threat too. The new challenge will be to be as courageous in less dramatic circumstances, to go beyond well-known sensitivities involving sovereignty and solidarity towards a common higher goal. May I even broaden the scope here? Economic policies are not an aim in themselves. Financial stability is not an aim in itself. We are doing this to safeguard and increase prosperity for all Europeans, to consolidate and deepen our European projects, which brought peace to the countries of our Union. Technical economic work is but a means at the service of higher values in human life. It is not a goal in itself. When we keep this fundamental inspiration in mind, when we remind ourselves why we are doing all this, we will not despair, and we will create our own hope. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am very pleased and honored to speak to you today at the event to mark the successful establishment of the Single Supervisory Mechanism. The SSM, one of the key components of the banking union, was established to ensure that strong supervisory standards are applied in a consistent manner across the euro area. The origin of the SSM lie in the hard lessons learned from the previous recent global financial crisis. The establishment of the SSM is a milestone in the reinforcement of the institutional framework of the euro area, which was deeply inspired by the report by the high-level group on supervision chaired by Jacques de Larosière. We need the SSM to promote certainty in the banking sector and boost the confidence of European citizens on market in the resilience of supervised banks. We need to ensure that European taxpayers will no longer foot the bill for ailing banks. The euro area needs healthy banks which enjoy the confidence of the people on the market. Only these institutions will be able to finance the real economy and support job creation. The SSM will provide a far-reaching and thorough supervisory framework for better early detection of risk developing within the financial institutions. The reform of the European banking supervisory system clearly offers both opportunities and challenges. Since 4 November 2014, the ECB has risen to the task and successfully assumed responsibility for supervision of the euro area banking sector. Today, besides talking about the establishment of the SSM, I would also, and more importantly, like to present my vision of the European banking supervisory system in the future. Moving to the SSM and banking union setup, the ECB now directly supervises 120 banking groups in the euro area, covering more than 85% of total banking assets. Around 3,400 smaller institutions are supervised indirectly through national supervisory authorities. Through this system of direct and indirect supervision, the SSM combines the strengths of national supervisory authorities and of the ECB. Establishing this integrated system of banking supervision was a major task. The scale of the undertaking was unprecedented. It required harmonized, comprehensive, and clearly defined supervisory standards and processes, practical infrastructures such as functional and tested IT systems, as well as appropriate governance structures for swift and effective decision-making. Staffing was one of the most important and earliest practical tests for the SSM. I'm pleased to report that the recruitment process attracted huge interest across Europe, permitting us to be selective and to hire only the very best and most experienced candidates. Most of the almost 900 people hired during the recruitment campaigns are now working at the ECB, including staff at the core of the SSM in the joint supervisory teams. Let me now say some words on an exercise of unprecedented magnitude recently completed by the ECB, the comprehensive assessment. This demanding exercise built a basis for the SSM by covering more than 85% of the euro area banks' balance sheets. We established strong processes at an early stage to ensure reliable results and the consistent implementation of the outcomes. The exercise brought together in cooperation the European Banking Authority, the European Commission, the European Systemic Risk Board, and the European Securities and Market Authority. One of our major priorities was to prevent surprises in the outcome for credit institutions. At the SSM level, every effort was made to involve all relevant stakeholders. A formal supervisory dialogue process was conducted to provide preliminary and partial results to the banks. And there was a constant interaction between the banks and the coordinators of the joint supervisory teams. Banks at which capital shortfalls were identified were given 2 weeks to develop sound and credible capital plans to be implemented over the coming months. The joint supervisory teams are currently assessing and reviewing these plans, which, along with the results of the comprehensive assessment, will be taken into account for the annual supervisory review and evaluation process. In conducting this stress test, in combination with a rigorous balance sheet check, we substantially enrich our knowledge of the banks we supervised and gain valuable insight into cross-border trends within the entire banking system. We also enhance transparency regarding the condition of our banks. I am sure that at the end of this whole process, when the appropriate measures to repair the impaired balance sheet have been taken, stakeholders will be reassured that our banks are fundamentally sound and trustworthy. In the future, we will see that the comprehensive assessment served as an excellent basis and one of the key building blocks in renewing confidence and stability in the euro area banking sector. For meeting all of the challenges in establishing the SSM, the ECB was a perfect and natural home. No other institution could have offered better support for the creation of the SSM. For a new supervisory authority starting its work, the ECB long-established services and its credibility as an institution were tremendous assets. I am fully convinced that the integration of micro and macro prudential tasks in one institution, the ECB, paves the way for enhancing the safety and stability of the European banking system in the euro area. Regarding the future of banking supervision in Europe, I would like now to say a few words about the ethos of the SSM, as I believe that it is essential to clearly define and articulate our philosophy from the start. Everyone, from those working at the institutions we supervise to our own frontline supervisory staff, must understand that the SSM will not shy away from intrusive and hands-on supervision. The SSM will diligently and assertively implement the single rule book. We will ask the hard questions and challenge the responses where necessary. Our supervisors are prepared to be assertive with the banks we supervise, and if, after appropriate period of dialogue, we remain unconvinced that the risk has been properly mitigated, we will take action. We will be a tough supervisor and will at the same time strive to be fair and even-handed in our actions. Crucially, our supervisory approach is backed up by strong administrative penalties and a robust enforcement and sanctioning team. The SSM will also make every effort to be transparent to all its workings. In September this year, we published a guide to our supervisory practices and methodologies, which provides practical assistance to our stakeholders and lays down a transparent common methodology for our work. Let me also remind you that for the first time in the history of the European Union, we have a banking supervisor with a truly European mandate. Of course, this will impact on the way we supervise the banking system. One important objective of the SSM is to improve the quality and consistency of banking supervision within the euro area. The SSM will deliver enhanced opportunities for benchmarking and peer comparison among institutions in the euro area. With due regard to the diversity of business models within Europe, which I believe is a clear strength, the SSM will allow us to improve the tools of supervisory risk assessment. The SSM will certainly be better placed to assess, monitor, and address the risk in the banking sector on a European scale. The SSM micro-prudential view will be further supported by the ECB macro-prudential task with respect to monitoring and addressing risk from a system-wide perspective. The powers given to the ECB to directly apply macro-prudential instruments, as well as to play a coordinating role among all member states, is an important innovation of the SSM regulation. And I am convinced that this will improve financial stability in the euro area. In addition, the SSM will give us a stronger consolidated perspective and enhance efficiencies in the allocation and transfer of intragroup capital and liquidity. This will help reduce market fragmentation, fostering financial integration, and ultimately allowing us to reap the benefits of the single market. In a nutshell, we will take full advantage of the new European level overview provided by the SSM. This truly European view is also translated into decision-making in the SSM and has a tangible impact on our day-to-day supervisory work. Let me remind you that all national competent authorities of euro area countries are represented in the supervisory board, and that all votes carry equal weight. Equal treatment, in accordance with the single rule book and without national bias, is at the core of the SSM. In return for participating in a pan-European supervisory system, national supervisors gain influence in supervision of banks in other countries. Most importantly, all supervisors gain insights into the developments and trends which may arise in other countries' banks before arriving in their home market. At the ECB in Frankfurt, we have teams dedicated only to analyzing such horizontal data, enabling us to have an early warning system. Another key aspect of the SSM approach to banking supervision, and maybe even the most important, is the concept of joint supervisory teams, what we call the GSTs, a new acronym to learn, sorry for that, comprising supervisors from the ECB and from the national supervisory authorities and managed by a coordinator working at the ECB. This GST will be essential in realizing the SSM's aim of maintaining proximity and close contact with the banks during the ongoing supervisory activities. We know that we have a wealth of experience to draw from, and the new structures of the joint supervisory teams, as well as that on-site inspection teams, unite the deep specific knowledge of national supervisors with the broad-ranging experience of the ECB. The joint supervisory teams are totally pan-European, combining staff from different countries and enriching a European overview with the detailed knowledge of national specificities. As part of ongoing supervision, the GSTs will regularly meet with the senior management and relevant staff of the banks they supervise and will organize on-site visits on specific topics. To obtain a complete overview of the banking system, the joint supervisory teams will also work in close cooperation with the professionals dealing with the supervision of less significant banks. All supervisors will be supported by horizontal divisions at the ECB, providing specialized expertise. The GST's pan-European approach will be strengthened by the deep integration between the ECB and the national supervisors. Of course, we will conduct a continuous dialogue about the ongoing supervision of our banks. This will be the basis of our work. but the exchanges of information on views on the supervised entity and on banking supervision in general will also become a key element in the SSM operation as a system. While the ECB will build upon the experience acquired by the national supervisors, the SSM approach to banking supervision will also be forward-looking. Our purpose is to address potential issues in a timely manner. We will promote multiple perspectives on risk, and will aim to develop a deep understanding of the risk factors, risk appetite, and business model of each entity. We will combine the individual approach with a cross-sector view and look at the linkages between banks and the rest of the financial sector. In order for the SSM to work efficiently, we will also actively encourage further harmonization of the banking regulatory environment. This is another important aspect of our work. Already 5 years ago, the de la Rosière report stated that there is no point in converging supervisory practices if the basic financial regulations remain fragmented. I fully share this view. The current banking regulatory framework is an undeniable improvement on the previous regime. However, there is still room for progress to ensure consistency and comparability of capital ratios, for example. The Capital Requirement Directive, the CRD4, contains too many national options and discretions, including on the speed of its implementation into the fully phased Basel III definitions. To deliver consistent supervision, we need fully harmonized European banking regulation. The ECB strongly supports all the initiatives likely to help reduce national discrepancies that add complexity to the existing rules and encourage regulatory arbitrage, thus empowering the creation of a level playing field. Of course, the ECB will play its part in promoting convergence. Our priority will be to tackle the most controversial national options, for instance, regarding the definition of capital. The SSM will also support the European Banking Authority in the promotion of the Single Rule Book and the Single Supervisory Handbook through the identification and diffusion of the best supervisory practices. It will also strongly contribute to harmonization by conducting and participating in peer reviews, survey, impact studies, which are key to understand the significance of the various options and discretions. The SSM looks forward to the development of a more harmonized international framework and will do its part by championing convergence in the design of future standards at both European and international level. The singleness of the SSM will be a real asset in this regard. Finally, I would like to say that I believe the establishment of the SSM is a landmark achievement in strengthening the institutional framework of the euro area. The creation of the SSM has been a major undertaking both for the ECB and the entire European Union. Now we must focus on its effective operation, on creating a thorough, comprehensive, and tough supervisory framework for Europe. I can assure you that we are all well prepared and ready to deliver on this task. Thank you for your attention.
result in such short time. But I think this achievement is also due to the fact that we got the regulation in time at record speed. And this was entirely to be credited to the Commission's effort. And just want to acknowledge this, that really the efforts of the Commission and Jonathan Fall is here, but also all his colleagues there were fundamental for being here today in this format. Thank you.